The Mario franchise has a place in the record books and in the hearts of millions of gamers worldwide. However, that doesn't mean all the games are perfect. Today, we're going to tell you about some of their flaws. Keep watching until the end, where we'll tell you how, in the Mario franchise, the more things change, the more they stay the same. If this is your first time visiting our channel, then make sure you like this video and subscribe to TheGamer. Oh, and you'll also want to ring that bell, ding ding, to join our notification squad. Without further ado, here are 10 problems with Mario games Nintendo fans choose to ignore. A very basic plot. If you're a younger gamer or someone who just got into video games relatively late in life, you'll quickly get used to seeing some things in games. One of these things is going to be playing games which have complex, involved, and movie-like plots. This is a byproduct of gaming technology getting better, meaning games can use more space to do more with. Compare and contrast the plot of, for instance, The Last of Us, with that of the Super Mario Bros. Games. There probably isn't much to tell you about the former, but you should definitely give The Last of Us a playthrough. It's very long and it's very emotional. It's all about fatherhood, survival, coming of age, zombies, sacrifice, betrayal, America, post-apocalyptic masculinity, and what it means to be human. And that's just on a linear game. That's just one example of a great plot from the modern era of video gaming. On the other hand, there's the first Super Mario Bros. This 1985 8-bit experience is a bit different. We put out a spoiler warning, but frankly, you know it. Bowser, the king of the Koopas, invades the Mushroom Kingdom and captures Princess Toadstool. So Mario has to cross 8 different worlds on 4 levels to rescue her. That's really all there is to it. You rescue the damsel in distress from the bad guy. It's not complex stuff. Super Mario Odyssey is out of control. Super Mario Odyssey was yet another worthy addition to Nintendo's legendary franchise. It was yet another spectacular triumph. But while it was genuinely awesome for the most part, there was one thing that a lot of gamers didn't like, and that was the state of the game's controls. People who played Super Mario Odyssey were left feeling awkward and uncomfortable when they had to use the motion controls. Some people's Joy-Cons just didn't work properly from the get-go, which also didn't help matters. Well, you might ask, why didn't they try to get around it? Well, that's because it was possible to play without using the motion controls, but it was also very difficult, which meant there had to be a third option. Switch players could buy Nintendo's Pro Controller. Having bought this overpriced controller, you'd expect the game to play perfectly, right? But in a lot of players, that just wasn't the case. Some people complained that the way the Pro Controller let you throw your hat was inconsistent, leading to unnecessary deaths and a lot of frustration. And as for the regular control scheme, people were left puzzled as to why so many of the buttons just did the same thing as other buttons. Yet people still play and love Super Mario Odyssey because, despite these issues, it's one of the best 3D Mario games we've ever played. Sunshine's camera. Back in the early days of the 21st century, Nintendo obsessives were ready for two things: a new game system and a new 3D Mario game. Luckily for everyone, they managed to get both. They got the GameCube in 2001, and the following year they got Super Mario Sunshine. Do you remember this one? It kinda gets forgotten when people are recalling their favorite games in the franchise. If you're a massive fan of Mario, the sort of fan who ignores the game's faults, you'll probably wonder why that was. If you aren't and you've played Super Mario Sunshine, then we think you'll have a specific reason why you've forgotten or tried to forget about this title. The game had a camera feature. That's pretty much commonplace with games nowadays, but it was relatively rare back in 2002. With Nintendo being Nintendo, of course they had to do it differently than everyone else. With Super Mario Sunshine, you weren't able to customize the camera controls, which had pretty predictable consequences. You ended up not being able to see what Mario was doing, which was a heck of a lot of fun if you were a sadist who wanted our favorite plumber to get killed a lot. If you just wanted to play the game though, it got really frustrating. One of the biggest positives about Mario games is that they're easy to pick up. With Super Mario Sunshine, the random perspective meant you had to be a gaming expert at times. Super hard Mario Bros. Something a lot of people think Nintendo has nailed with the Mario franchise is the learning curve. The games are usually easy to pick up, but harder to complete and much harder to get your 100% completion. But defeating the main villain is usually possible with hard work and practice. However, there was one exception where things went too far. With Super Mario Bros. Being a massive worldwide success, it was only sensible that Nintendo released a sequel as soon as they reasonably could. This meant that if you lived in Japan, you got a brand new Super Mario Bros. Game, imaginatively titled Super Mario Bros. 2, which must have taken them literally seconds to come up with. And hey, it was a great game. Well, it was meant to be fun, if you liked a really challenging game. It was basically Super Mario Bros. For masochists. We all know it's good to get a mushroom in Mario, right? In this game, there were poison mushrooms which could kill you. You might want to be careful when making a jump, because there are winds that blow you back and kill you as well, and a never-ending stream of buzzy beetles. The game was actually marketed in Japan as being frustrating, so much so that Nintendo's American division thought people in the West would rather play a fun game and refused to release it. It wasn't available here until Super Mario All-Stars came out for the SNES in 1993. Not really a Mario game. No matter what you think of Nintendo, you have to give them credit for one thing. Back in the early 80s, it looked like home consoles were dead. It was only when the Nintendo Entertainment System became huge that the hobby we all know and love today was saved. Thanks, Nintendo! A crucial part of Nintendo's success was the element of sheer joy and fun that the company brought into people's homes. So that's why when Nintendo's American operation was offered the super frustrating Japanese version of Super Mario Bros. 2, they passed on it. This presented the company with a new opportunity, and that was taking a relatively obscure Japanese platformer, shoving Mario and his buddies in it, and passing it off as an actual Mario game. The Super Mario Bros. 2 that most of us know is a genuinely weird game, especially in the context of Mario. Firstly, the princess was no doubt relieved not to be kidnapped, but to appear as a playable character. Secondly, there were no Koopas or Goombas anywhere in sight. Thirdly, you didn't kill enemy characters by jumping on them. You got rid of them by picking up vegetables from the ground and hurling them at them. Of course, it all makes sense if you remember that this isn't the real Super Mario Bros. 2. It's really the somewhat forgotten game Doki Doki Panic reskinned as a Mario game. An inconsistent Odyssey. Players of the Nintendo Switch have, on the whole, absolutely loved Super Mario Odyssey. The hat-chucking new wave platformer has certainly sold one heck of a lot of copies and has also received plenty of critical acclaim. Well done! The thing is, the game isn't perfect despite what game reviewers and Mario devotees might like you to believe. We think there's a problem with the game's graphics. Well, not so much so how they look, because they're brilliant and make full use of the Switch's capabilities, but with the way they look, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, let us explain. What we always liked about the Mario games is that, while the different worlds all look different, each game had a unified look. You could take a screenshot of a later level, show it to someone who just played the first level, and they'd know it was the same game. Here, not so much. We all loved how the crazy way New Donk City played and looked like, even though it made us look at Mario like he was a bit weird, which isn't what should happen. Or how there's Bowser being Bowser, but he's standing next to a dragon that looks as realistic as a dragon is ever going to look. It's all very incongruous and inconsistent when you think about it, and it starts to get a bit annoying. Yeah, we said no open worlds. With any new development, there's always a risk that the pioneer will end up becoming so attached to its innovation that it ends up not innovating as much as it could. Still with us? In a strange sort of way, that might be true of the Mario games. During the 8-bit era and for most of the 16-bit era too, platformers were incredibly linear. You started at one place, moved to the right, and ended up at the end. While it was mostly fun, there were times it was pretty easy to get bored. So when Super Mario Bros. 3 introduced a map screen, it was quite literally a game changer. Now Mario didn't have to do all the levels in exactly the same order, and he could sometimes skip a level. No more annoying auto-scroll levels in the grass world. And that was all well and good, but there was a problem. Now, Nintendo's RPGs certainly helped point the way towards open-world gaming, but Mario never really got there. It was always a bit too much to change the formula that's been working so well for so long. It wasn't until the 3D Mario games where things became relatively open-world-y, if that's even a word. It's not? Okay, moving on. Even then, they still weren't true open-world games when compared to a game like Far Cry 5. There are so many locked doors, levels, and kingdoms that require a certain amount of stars, shine sprites, or moons to unlock. Pachinko. Back in the 1980s, video games had to be hard because there wasn't that much space on the cartridge. Players needed to get their money's worth, and if you paid $40, you wouldn't want to be done and dusted within 24 hours. As technology improved, however, games ended up being a bit nicer and a bit easier to complete, albeit with more of a game to explore. That meant especially difficult and frustrating bits of games became more noticeable and more notorious. Perhaps the most frustrating level for the post-8-bit era gamer in the Mario franchise comes in Super Mario Sunshine. What makes it more annoying than all the other levels in the game is that it seems to be designed to make you throw your controller at your console. It's also a completely optional level, so you don't need to play it. Well, you do, but only if you're going for 100% completion. Oh wait, you are going for 100% completion, aren't you? Well, you'll have to face the supreme frustration that is Pachinko. It's really bad. It really is. The game's infamously weird camera doesn't help, but by the time you've maneuvered around the level trying to get your 8 red coins and trying to get Mario into the right holes to do so, you'll have to be killed repeatedly and then left wondering whether it was all really worth it. So tell me, was it worth it? Trying to save number 3. Sometimes something becomes so commonplace it can be hard to remember what the world was like without it. Imagine life without the internet or smartphones. It'll be super weird, right? And both of these things have only really been around for an integral part of society for 25 years or so. For gamers, the thing we can't imagine is a world where you weren't able to save your game and pick up right where you left off. There are probably some of you right now who wouldn't even think of playing a game like that. After all, you don't really need the hassle of any game that didn't have a save feature. It wouldn't be that great, right? Wrong. There are some people who consider Super Mario Bros. 3 to be the greatest Mario game of all time. And they have a point. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a genuinely great game, introducing such innovations as the game map, the flying Mario, but it had one flaw. The original NES version of the game didn't have a save feature. These were relatively rare at the time, but they did exist. There wasn't even a password feature, so if you ran out of time, you'd have to start again through no fault of your own. Luckily, when it was reissued for the SNES as part of the Super Mario All-Stars, it also had a save feature. We've been here before. In 1985, Nintendo Entertainment System owners who played Super Mario Bros. Knew what it was about. Bowser had raided the Mushroom Kingdom, captured Princess Toadstool, and it was up to Mario to rescue her. In 2017, Nintendo Switch owners who played Super Mario Odyssey knew what it was about. Bowser had raided the Mushroom Kingdom, captured Princess Peach, and it was up to Mario to rescue her. See where we're going here? Yes, it was a 32-year time gap, but in that time, the only difference in terms of plot was that the princess had changed her name, which happened at some point between Super Mario World and Super Mario 64. In fact, the basic Bowser captures the princess and Mario has to rescue her plot has been used a lot. It was also used in the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, Super Mario 64, both Super Mario Galaxy games, and all 3 new Super Mario Bros. Games. It might be a bit worrying that, despite the incredibly talented people who work for Nintendo, they're a bit lacking in the plot department. Should it matter? Not really. We think that if the game's mechanics are good enough, the amazing plot is just a bonus. But with more than 30 years between the first Mario game and the most recent one, you'd like them to have more confidence to try something new. And those were 10 problems with Mario games Nintendo fans choose to ignore. We hope you enjoyed it. What's the biggest problem you've got with a Mario game? Are there any problems we've missed on our list? Let us know in the comments section below and make sure you subscribe to The Gamer to stay up to date with all things gaming. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.